This video is about how to teach yoga for beginners in a class setting. My name is Ashley and I am a yoga teacher and a yoga teacher trainer, and I help people develop into yogis or yogi teachers through online training and in-person trainings. And one of the things I've struggled with as a teacher is feeling comfortable and confident in teaching a beginner yoga class. You might think that new teachers are the best people to teach beginner classes, but you're gonna find a lot of questions that could be easier answered with someone maybe a little more experienced. But either way, these are gonna be some tips to help you manage through and create a solid yoga class for beginners, whether it's an hour or an hour and a half or how much time you need. These are some great tips that will help you. Number one is to set up your class appropriately. Now this is kind of a basic guideline or basic thing that you want to do. It's just to make sure that everything is set up as it needs to be. I personally love setting people up in a circle. So that way when you're talking and you're having this conversation, or if anyone has questions, other people are able to see that person, and also it makes it easier as a connecting tool for everyone else. Because you're not there for you. You're teaching beginner yoga, you're teaching yoga for them. You're not teaching to them, you're teaching for them. So this is a learning experience for all. And to make sure that you have any props or anything out and ready, that way you're not shuffling around as everyone's trying to set up. Like, you have it ready, we're done. The most important thing, I think, is tip number 2 is to discuss and remember your goal and expectations. The goal of teaching a beginner yoga class is not to teach everything you know. Not at all. The goal of teaching a beginner yoga class is, anybody know? Is to make people feel comfortable, to get rid of those fears, and to give them the confidence to come back. So your goal is not to teach them a whole lot about yoga. Your goal is actually to make them feel a certain way. So in that regard, you want to be welcoming, you want to smile, you want to introduce yourself, you want to explain the little things and answer the questions that they may be forming in their heads but not wanting to ask, and giving them permission to ask those questions if they have them. So instead of just standing up at the front of the room and just word vomiting all this stuff about yoga that you're so excited about, make this more about them. So that goes into number 3, is treat this class like a conversation. Treat it like a dialogue back and forth. One of my favorite things to do at the very beginning of Yoga for Beginners is to ask each person what their expectations or what their goal is coming to yoga. Not to this class in general, but what is their goal in fitness or well-being in general. That way I'm able to have a conversation with them one-on-one, and even just, a small way to suggest or recommend certain classes, certain teachers, certain styles. And my class and the way that I teach regularly might not be for that person, and I'm okay with that, because I'm not going to be for everybody. They're not going to be for me, I'm not going to be for them. That's okay. I want to provide that safe place to be able to recommend and share with them what might work best for their goals. So treat it like a conversation. Along with that, as you're teaching, remember to ask if anyone has questions. So give people permission to ask questions, to talk. Say, ask them what they're feeling. Have people actually verbalize rather than just taking in a bunch of stuff, because it can be very overwhelming your first time in a yoga class. Even just the fact that they stepped in there in the yoga studio, it's very overwhelming. So giving them a whole bunch more is going to be like, whoa, overload. So giving them time to reflect and step back and be like, yeah, I'm feeling this, or I have a question about this pose, or if this is what's best for me, why is it hurting here? So make sure that you have that back and forth and that permission so that they can talk to you as well. Number 4 is to go through the poses, but not too many. Remember, this is kind of like an overview. So it's an overview not just of the poses, but of the whole practice, which is so all-encompassing, especially if you're at a specific studio and you want to get through, like, talk about the other teachers and talk about everything else. So you want to go through some poses, but not too many. And this is also dependent on the style that you teach. I personally teach Vinyasa yoga. It's a flow, power yoga. So what I'm gonna do as far as the teaching of the poses is to set up the breath. So we get in a comfortable seated pose, and I talk about how to breathe, deep belly breaths, and why we breathe this way, because it keeps us in the present moment, how to breathe, why we breathe. It allows us to be here and now, which is the goal through the class. Then I'll go through some simple spinal warm-ups. So talking about the importance of our core strength, and we do, side to side, some twists, maybe cat and cow, back and forth. From there, we go into a breakdown of a sun salutation. Because I teach Vinyasa class, a sun salutation is very prominent through my classes. So it's something that I want to make sure to get through in a beginner class, because it's something they're going to see a lot. If you teach maybe a different style, you might not do the sun salutation. But what I found is that the sun salutation is very much all-encompassing of many of the poses. So we've got plank pose, downward facing dog, upward facing dog, forward fold, and mountain pose. Those are really good ones to break down and make sure people are feeling the correct things and in correct alignment. So you'll go around and talk about them. And what's also good to mention is hands-on adjustments. If you are someone that does give hands-on adjustments, make sure you talk about that. So always be explaining why you're doing something and giving people permission to refuse or to ask questions. Always that permission thing, and having clear boundaries. So if you're giving hands-on adjustments, maybe asking if they like one, or even just getting up to them and saying, hey, maybe try this today. You don't even have to touch anybody. It's just making sure everyone's in good alignment. And okay, so after the sun salutation, there's usually only like a few minutes left in an hour-long class. So this goes by so fast. After that, I'll try to get through a few standing poses, such as lunge and warrior stance. So the difference between a crescent lunge and a warrior stance, we might do warrior 2. Triangle pose is a big one. A standing balance pose, like tree pose, is always good to incorporate. And then sometimes, just for fun, I'll add something like crow pose, or like one of those little arm balances, just to make sure people are still, having fun and challenging themselves, even though we're in a beginner class. So crow pose is a beginner arm balance. And then we come back down to the floor, do some seated, some supine stuff, so on your back, like a twist, legs up the wall, bridge, things that are going to help cool you down. The most important part about going through poses, I think one of them, is really selling Shavasana. Like telling people how amazing Shavasana is, and why we need it, and why we should crave it, why we want to be still and lay down and not do anything for a few minutes. So if you can really, really talk people into staying, that way they don't get up and leave or think there's more important things to do before they go, explain that. So this is gonna be quite wordy of a class for you because there's a lot of explanation, but I found it to be very, very helpful for the students who are there. Along with Shavasana, at the studio that I used to teach at, we would always give Shavasana adjustments. So a press on the shoulders, we'd use essential oils, press on the shoulders, and we pull on the neck, and we do a little eyebrow sweep. And to a beginner person in a normal class not expecting that, they might get a little bit like, whoa, what are you doing? So during this beginner class, I demonstrate it and I ask someone if they want to be a demo, and everyone else is seated, so they're looking at what I'm doing, and that way they can see what I'm doing to the person while they're in Shavasana laying down, and that way they know what to expect. So I'll give a little demo, explain that I'm going to push on the shoulders and then pull on the neck, and then I do an eyebrow sweep, and that's that. And then I ask if anyone would like to feel how that feels, just lay back and I will do that to you. Otherwise, place your hand on your belly and just lay back and chill for a few minutes. And I find that most people are like, yeah, I wanna see how that feels, and just to try it. And everything's always optional. So I really like just allowing people to choose and to see what's going on and to ask questions. Biggest thing, again, making them feel comfortable and knowing what to expect. Number 6, I guess that was number 5, is sell Shavasana, like sell the crap out of Shavasana. Number 6 is thank them for coming. Simple. is to thank them for joining and finish up with however you would finish a class, maybe namaste or whatever. You might want to explain what namaste means. Again, always an explanation. And then stay behind for a little while and see if anyone else has any questions, or talk to them about their next steps. So that might be giving them recommendations for further learning tools, whether it's books or resources or your websites or someone's class or your schedule, just depending on the person. So that's an individual basis. You want to get to know each person individually, because not everybody is going to no one usually needs the same thing. They each need something different, just slightly. Sometimes it's similar, but just slightly different. So someone might be a busy mom and they really can't make it to a class a whole lot, but they just want to know a simple sequence or a place to go. Maybe it's an online video that you can recommend. Someone might be looking to start a rigorous 90-minute practice and they want to be there every single day. Someone might be looking for relaxation. Someone may be looking for complementary training to go with their marathon training or something. So knowing the different classes that would be best to complement someone's life is a great skill to have. My favorite thing is to connect people to what they need most. It's not to, again, word vomit all the stuff. I'm not trying to tell you everything that I know about yoga and niyamas and yamas and santosha and pranayama and samadhi and here are the 8 limbs, learn all of that. Most people don't need that right away. They need the next step, the one single step. So make them feel comfortable in your beginner yoga class. All right, I hope that was helpful. Let me know if these tips were helpful to you in the comments. And if you want to find some awesome resources, I have like a 10-step sequencing guide and a cueing guide for yoga teachers over at ashesyoga.com/resources. You can find a bunch of free resources over there. My next teacher training is in June in Wisconsin, so I hope that you look into that if that's something you've been contemplating doing. So 200 hours in June. It's a pretty intensive, but should be really fun. That's over at alleycatyoga.net. You can find information there. Again, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.